So why do I get to teach you guys about mentoring and volunteering? Well, I live on an off-the-grid permaculture farm on the southern Caribbean coast of Costa Rica. I've been there about 8 years, and that was actually my first experience working with volunteers. I didn't do a whole lot of volunteer work in university or in my 20s or anything like that. And when I started living off the grid was when we already had this volunteer program going at our farm. Called the Punta Center for Regenerative Design and Botanical Studies. Volunteers have been critical to the development of Punta over the 22 years that we've been there. And so the volunteers, they really helped to get a lot of the gardens going. They helped with the hospitality side of it because we're also an education center and have people visiting us and also have workshops and permaculture courses and those kinds of things happening, as well as extended volunteer programs, internships, and apprenticeships. And so when I started living at Punta was when I, again, started working with volunteers. And for me, I had many different things kind of come up in working with volunteers, various kinds of frustrations, also friendships come and go, which was really hard at first because there's a certain level of attachment sometimes you get to your volunteers. And then also realizing that I can't do everything. And just like all of you, you can't do everything on your farm. And so if you can afford staff are amazing, but they come with a pretty high cost. Whereas with the volunteers are providing free labor as well as sometimes paying a tuition to actually be there with you. And we're going to talk about that in some of your handouts, specifically about how to decide how much to charge a volunteer and if you want to charge a volunteer. And for those of you who are maybe looking to volunteer, also deciding do I want to be a part of a project I pay for and be in some ways an investor in, or do I want to be, a woofer and working for free and without any kind of a financial exchange. And again, in all of your handouts, you're going to see the different definitions of volunteers, apprentices, interns, voluntourists, and woofers. So you get all that again in your handout. Working with volunteers for me happens at our farm, the Punta Center. It also, with the Envision Festival, which I'm the co-producer of, we work with volunteers there as well. And the volunteers at the festival also fill a really important niche in all kinds of roles, from production to build, to the green team, to working behind the bars, to being in hospitality. Volunteers are critical to helping it run. And what's so cool about volunteering is that you really get to be a part of something, and you get to give back and give to a project in a way that's hopefully mutually enhancing for both of you. And so as the volunteer, what are you going to get out of it? You're going to get experience, you're going to get friendships, and you're also going to get to say that you help make something happen. And so some of the really important things as you're working with volunteers is developing certain levels of trust and also the ability to surrender, because with your volunteers, you're not going to be able to sit there and micromanage them, and you don't want to micromanage them because that doesn't facilitate your growth, and it doesn't facilitate the growth of the volunteer either, with you hovering over them all the time. And so it's really important to create a framework of expectations, and within that expectation, having some fluidity in that, your expectation might not actually meet your expectation. Like what happened with the volunteers, maybe it didn't have the color or the way that they painted something or the way that the garden bed was planted. Maybe it wasn't exactly what you envisioned, but that's okay. And so it's really important to surrender, to know that different personalities, different skill sets, different experience, different perspectives are coming into your project, and that's only going to enrich your project. And so if you are a micromanager, I actually don't recommend working with volunteers because it won't be a good experience for either of you. It's really, really important to set the framework and to set some kind of a fluid expectation and to set, some kind of an outline for your volunteers to work with. So then in the end, when the project's over, when the garden bed's completed, when their time is done with you, you can see how well did I do in explaining my vision, and how well did the volunteer do in making that vision happen along with me. And so again, micromanaging, it's stepping back. You want to meta manage. You want to oversee what the volunteers are doing, checking in with them throughout the day, etc. But also knowing that, you know, you're gonna let them have some reign over the project themselves, so they feel empowered, because that's what's really important, is that they have their time on your project feeling empowered and feeling like they've grown and feeling like they're giving back, but that they're also receiving from you. So in our next segment, we're going to be talking about what it's like to be a good mentor.